Get your checkbooks at the ready. We're back for another Severe MMA betting show. We bring these to you each and every pay-per-view event. I don't know whether it's a good thing. I don't know whether it's a bad thing, but we'll see after this one if it is a good thing. Theo Lander is with me as always. He's going to go through some of his best bets for the UFC 298 card this weekend. As am I. I'm going to share my thoughts on some of the fights and some of the bets as well. Theo, good sir, how are you doing? How are things over on the East Coast?
It's cold. It's cold. We were supposed to get a big nor'easter this week. Did not happen, but it's been in the 20s all week. I'm freezing my ass off, but it's a good thing we got this card this weekend, man. I really need it. And the best thing about it all is I love the board, Ian. I love these picks. I can't wait to get into it, brother. Good to see you.
Love it. I love it. And you know, one thing all I will say is, and Sean has mentioned previously in some of our podcasts about the cold. I think we can write the book on cold over here in Saskatchewan. A cool, breezy -24 today in the province. But I know you get that rough East Coast kind of bipolar weather sometimes where you get some storms and snowstorms that hit you really quickly. Is it? Have you got any bad storms this winter so
Y-
far?
I mean, not in terms of snow. We've had a lot of like rain and winds,
Mm.
but like you said, the bipolar weather. It was 60 degrees Fahrenheit Sunday. Yesterday morning was 21 degrees Fahrenheit. It's just ridiculous. Like I was walking around with short sleeves, shorts on. This morning I'm bundled up with 3 layers. So it's definitely bipolar. It's tough out here, but like I said, glad to be with you.
That would probably be even more impressive if I could read Fahrenheit temperatures. I
You
would
said
be a degree.
minus 24. I was like, I don't know how that
No, no,
cold is, but
-24 Celsius. So the one through measurement of temperature, the Celsius, the good old European way. But yeah, never got into it. And a lot of our thermostats and stuff over here in Canada, they would be set to Fahrenheit, but I would go in and I'd meddle with the settings and change them back to Celsius. But nonetheless, as we said, things are going to hot up this weekend. That UFC 298 will be watching along on that. It's the betting show. We remind everybody to gamble responsibly. If it's not fun, we stop. We are not betting experts. We're doing this for a bit of fun. We enjoy having a little bit of a niggle here and there. We'll share our thoughts, but we're not going to be counting on units or doing any major breaking bets or making any major money here. We'll share our thoughts on the fights. We'll share our thoughts on some of the bets. And as I said, gamble responsibly. We put all of the details. If you do need any help when it comes to gambling, in the comment section, in the description of this video, if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on Patreon, we probably won't do that, but we'll still tell you to gamble responsibly. Before we get into 298, Theo, we appeared for the very first time on the 297 card, and we put down some bets on that card. So I was a mixed bag of results. Not the best start, not the worst start, but definitely something to build towards. Take us through some of the bets.
I mean, as a team, overall, our parlay lost, first of all, which was not a great outing for us. But, those leggers are kind of hard to get together anyways. So I kind of was anticipating that happening anyways. But overall, we went 3-7 as a pairing with our individual straight bets, which is not horrible if you're thinking about, professional gamers supposed to be around like 50, a little bit over 50%. So we're not that far off. I personally was 1-4, not a great showing. Ian sort of carried the load there, went 2-3. Yeah, honestly, I had missed on Strickland. We both missed on Katona and Allen money line. The only one that I had gotten right was Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington over 4.5. And I wish that hadn't happened considering how the fight honestly played out.
Yeah, for
But
sure. What price was that?
that was -125, so
Mm.
just barely close to almost even money. Yourself, you picked Streakers du Plessis, which was a plus money bet, plus 100. You also had Raquel Pennington plus 240, which again, great pick by you, good value, but horrible fight. And again, you missed on Katona Allen like myself, and Malcolm Gordon as well. -200 money line did not cash. So
Yeah, that Malcolm Gordon pick was not good. The way the fight went, but I think he kind of screwed himself. But two plus money lines for me coming up. We got a couple more plus money lines on the way for UFC 298. Overall, looking at the card for 298, Theo, we were both saying it before we came on, not the easiest card to bet on. You know, when it comes to straight up bets and when it comes to value straight up on the money line here, there's not too much value out there. You have to kind of go a little bit digging. And I have leaned a little bit more on methods and maybe rounds here than I would have liked. But, you know, why not? Let's take a little bit of a chance. How do you feel about the card overall? I assume you're the same. It's difficult enough to get a good bet on this one.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the issue you're gonna have on this one isn't like prediction wise, but it's more so value. It feels like the favorites, they are the favorites, but they're not gonna give you the best return on your bets. Like, I only have one, underdog technically on my card. Um, it's just a really hard one to bet on if you're really going for profit. Again, we're doing this mostly for fun. We're not really betting any serious wagers, not chasing our losses, anything like that. But if you're looking for value, it's gonna be a tough night for you, if we're being honest.
Bet365 is where we have gotten our values, or at least where I've got mine anyway. Theo, I can't speak for the both of us, but we will see. We'll say we both got them from Bet365 anyway.
Somehow, yeah.
Yeah, let's get into the main event. Both of us have money down on the main event. Start with me with your opinions on the main event. How do you see it going down, and where's your money laying on this fight between Alex Volkanovski and Ilia Topuria?
Man, I mean, this is one that's kind of been circled on the map, on the calendar, I should say, for me for a while, even before it was really scheduled. Going back, I think 2 years ago, I was starting to really get high on Ilia Topuria and what he could potentially do in a title situation like this. And I saw Alex Volkanovski's reign. I said, you know what? If I had to pick one guy out of the bunch at featherweight who could give Alex the kind of problems it would take to beat him at 145, it would be Ilia. And I think now you're seeing a lot more people jump on that bandwagon after the Makhachev loss, or at least in the second fight. But man, I think this is a really close fight. I just think that Ilia has the abilities in the right areas of the fight to beat Volk. Very good boxing inside the pocket, very good and very sound defensively, excellent jiu-jitsu. He's just a really tough overall guy for Volk to face, especially at this point in his career. People are talking about the 35 years old curse as a champion. Of course, coming off that knockout loss to Makhachev, the first one he's had in the UFC. It's a really, really close fight, but for all those reasons, for all the momentum that's going Ilia's way, I have to side with Ilia Topuria on this one.
What price is he?
He's currently listed at plus 110, and that is my first pick on my card as well. I wish that it was a little bit higher. I thought a lot more people would be putting money on Volkanovski, which would move the line around, but I honestly don't hate it. It's the only plus odds on my card, like I said earlier, but I'm pretty confident in that one.
And closer, as the fight gets closer, I think you're going to be lucky to be picking up Ilia at plus money at all. I've been looking at a couple of sites. He's down as close to as minus 110. It's a pick 'em fight on some other website. So, if you're doing a little bit of digging around, if you're doing a little bit of shopping towards Ilia, that is a close fight. I couldn't agree any more with what you said. Although I do think Alex Volkanovski is going to get the job done. A very close decision. I feel the fight is going to go the distance. Now, a lot of people are fancying Ilia to get that finish. He does have the power to do it. My pick for the main event was for Ilia Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski to go the distance at plus 130. I think that's a solid bet, but and depending on Ilia not getting Alex, I don't think Alex has that one punch knockout power to get him out of there. How does Ilia handle later stages of the fight? He starts strong. He seems to have a good gas tank earlier on, but I'm very interested to see what happens in the second half of this fight. Once we get into the later stages of the third round and the fourth and fifth, obviously, I think we might see a little bit of a turn. I'm interested. We simply don't know, but I think it is a very interesting fight. I think it is one that we're going to remember for a long time, and hopefully we can get our bets up on either side. So that's Theo with a plus 110 on Ilia Topuria, myself, Volk, and Topuria to go the distance at plus 130. So 2+1, 2+ bets going there into the main event. And like I said, if you're out there, you can get Ilia Topuria at this stage at plus money. I'd be snapping that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, before we move on, I want to touch on that point you just brought up about Ilya's cardio. You know, against Josh Emmett, he went the whole distance with him. He looked great in the fourth and fifth round. But again, you got to realize that he was fighting that fight basically at his own pace. It was sort of one-way traffic for that fight. It's a very different type of cardio that would require you to not fight at your own pace and go the distance with a guy like Alex Volkanovski, who's so good at interrupting footwork patterns and sort of catching you off beat, making you miss breaths. That's a different type of cardio you have to be ready for. And it's a big question mark going into this one. You know, if I had to actually predict on how the fight would go, I would say that maybe Volk is a little bit slower on the gas pedal to start off, and he's sort of playing catch up to try to win rounds as the fight goes on, where Ilya might be fading because he's not used to that type of pressure late in the fight. But you know, for all the reasons listed before, this is going to be an amazing fight, and I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to the co-main event. No bets for me in the co-main event. Robert Whittaker, Paulo Costa. Interesting fight. Interesting fight. A lot of hanging over this fight and what Robert Whittaker we're going to see inside the cage. Theo, give me your opinion on the fight, where your money is going, and we'll go from there.
Well, again, you know, we were talking earlier about how it's really hard to get value on this card in particular. So I decided to go with Whittaker versus Costa, goes over 2.5 rounds, and that is coming in at -158. You know, I don't see a finish happening in this fight. I know a lot of people are seeing the explosive power of Paulo Costa, and maybe Whittaker could get a finish late in that fight as well if he is to, you know, sort of overwhelm him with his cardio. But you know, I don't know what version of Whittaker we're going to get. I don't think he looked himself against Dricus du Plessis. I think he made a lot of like really uncharacteristic mistakes in that fight. And again, Costa's coming off a really, really long period of inactivity, it feels like. And even when he is active, what are you going to expect from Paulo Costa? He's always something different. It's a really hard fight to pick, but I think the best bet for value wise on this one is just to have him go over 2.5 rounds.
What price do you got on that?
It's -158 right now.
Nice. Yeah. It's an understandable bet. Not that much. A little bit of value. Once you get under -100, there is a little bit of value. You know, we're looking at the straight up money line here. We have Robert Whittaker at -225. We have Paulo Costa at +187 at the time of the recording. I mean, you've taken out all of that doubt and you've just banked on both of these guys going to war over the course of 2.5 rounds. And, you know, I can't argue with that at all. For me, with this fight, I feel it is more so for me what Robert Whittaker turns up, and I think he has the capabilities of beating Paulo Costa, and yeah, I think he will probably get the job done. He seems in the right frame of mind. He seems that he's ready to go in there and is ready for this challenge. But like I said, no money for me on this fight, and we shall see what happens in that. Any final thoughts before we move on, Theo?
We are in a very, very dangerous spot, as the SevereMMA staff know. The last time we all picked Robert Whittaker unanimously in a fight, he lost to Dricus du Plessis. If Paulo Costa wins this fight, we may have a severe MMA curse on our hands.
Yeah,
so we better pray that Robert Whittaker pulls it off here.
Yeah, the dreaded vote of confidence by the SevereMMA crew is something that people need to look out for. So we've jinxed many a fighter in the past, and we'll continue to try and do so with our picks when they do come out. Let's move on to the next fight. And the next one is a very big one, Theo. It's Ian Garry versus Jeff Neal in the welterweight division. Both of us have money down on this, do we? Yes, we certainly do. You have your set of bets down. I have my set of bets down on this fight. But before we talk about those bets, let's talk about your opinion about this fight.
Man, I mean, you know, I honestly am of the opinion that the UFC doesn't really take time building people enough. I was a big fan of how they did it with Sean O'Malley. I thought they gave him appropriate matchups at the time, a big step up eventually to Petr Yan, which ended up paying off well for them. And they're doing a sort of similar path with Ian Gary, of course, not to the same level. He's fought more legit guys early on than Sean O'Malley has, but they're not throwing him into the deep end just yet. You know, Neil Magny to Jeff Neal, and even Vicente Luque mixed in there with the scheduled fight last time. Those are appropriate, almost lateral steps in competition, at least at the very most basic level skill wise. They're very different stylistically, but you know, I don't see Ian Gary having much trouble with Jeff Neal, if I'm being honest with you here. Jeff Neal is a guy who has power in both hands, who can fight going forwards and backwards. I think he's going to want to pressure Ian early, but Ian's comfortable fighting like that. You know, Ian's made a career in the UFC off of being a counter puncher who's fine retreating throughout the octagon, who's fine hitting you with counter shots. Like, I don't see Jeff Neal possessing too many significant issues here for Ian Gary, if I'm being honest. But I couldn't go as far to say that Ian would get a finish in this fight because of the Neil Magny fight, how dominant he was in that performance, and he didn't go for the finish. Not to say that he didn't go for it, but he didn't pull it off necessarily. You know, I would rate Jeff Neal to be a bit more durable than Neil Magny, so I think it's a tougher task to finish a guy like that. I still think Ian does so in a dominant fashion, probably over the distance, but I really didn't want to bet him for finish, so I just took Ian Gary money line, and that's minus 230. Not a juicy pick at all, but I had to be safe on this one, Ian. I had a really bad time last month.
Yeah, that's it. Look, probably didn't take up that advice after not having a great time. Look, money is money at the end of the day. Put money down, you get the win. Everybody is happy. Your assessment of what happened in the Neil Magny fight is very true, and there would be a little bit of a worry for me on Ian's maybe killer instinct right now, but I think it's as heightened as it's ever been before going into an octagon. He's got a lot of anger built up, a lot obviously with all the stuff that's been going on outside of the cage. He wants to go in and punish someone, and Jeff Neal is, in my opinion, the guy who's going to go in and do that on Saturday night. There's one area where I feel in this fight that you don't want to be with Jeff Neal, and that's in the pocket. I don't think Ian needs to be putting himself in the pocket. Jeff Neal has some serious power, and if he catches it, you're going to be in big trouble. The other area I feel where Ian will have a big advantage, and if we're to go by what level of preparations he has been doing ahead of this fight over down in Shoot the Box in Brazil, you know, he's been working with Damian Maia, he's been working with Charles Oliveira. Are we going to see Ian showcase some of his grappling abilities in this fight? And that would have, like, I would class Jeff Neal to have a big hole in that side of things in his game. Now, Ian is going to want to showcase his overall level of ability here. So I feel he is going to probably look to dominate Jeff Neal on the feet. And I'm very, very curious to see once he does that, if he does that, will he look to take the fight down? Will he go for submission? Will he try and get that impressive finish? For that reason, I've gone with a bit of a flyer in this bet. I've gone for Ian Gary to win via submission at plus 600. So if we're going based off his camp and the chit chat, you know, that's worth a splash for me, to be honest. I think you probably did the right thing out of the two of us and hitting up the straight up money line. I think that's almost guaranteed money. Taking a little bit of a chance with him, number one, getting the finish, and number two, when that finish comes, it being a submission, because you know Ian likes to throw those punches, likes to throw those kicks, and could very easily be a knockout here as well. It could very easily be a decision, but I think the straight up money line, that's a smart bet. I'm reaching for the stars a little bit. Any final thoughts, Theo?
Well, one of us has to be boldy, and so I'm glad you're taking the charge on that. And listen, if you're really going for value on this one, the way that these lines work is that, like, you know, we haven't really seen a lot of grappling from Ian Gary in the UFC yet. We saw like a little bit of it in Cage Warriors, but really still not a lot. And that was a long time ago. So his grappling game, to our eyes, is just completely alienated. We have no idea what he's capable of, really. So, in saying that, the best odds you're going to get on a guy like Ian Gary, who's known for being a striker via submission, are going to be before he pulls it off for the first time in the UFC. You know, you might not get him at plus 600 later in his career if he gets a sub on this one. So honestly, I don't hate the play. I'm going to anticipate it's a bit more of a sprinkle for you than it is what a particular unit would be, but I don't hate it at all, honestly. Even though we were talking about his inability for the finish, I think submission is it's a sharp call.
Yeah, he's got to go in there and prove some sort of a point, and getting the job done by finish, is the ultimate kind of you know the ultimate result that he will want to be getting, to say, like he says, he wants to prove all the doubters wrong. Well, it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited to see that plus 600 for the submission, and for Theo, the money line at minus 230 for Ian Gary. Moving next on down the line, Theo, I'm going to send it straight over to you. Marabdashvili versus Henry Cejudo. You've got some money in play there, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the fight before you share your bet with us.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Henry Cejudo is a guy who came off a long layoff against Aljamain Sterling in New Jersey last year when they challenged for the title. And we had a lot of question marks. Where was he at in his game? How much had he regressed? How much had he regressed in the time off, I should say? And in that fight against Aljamain Sterling, a little bit of ring rust was there. I thought his timing was off in some areas, but he didn't look like he was that far off of the Henry that we knew before. And so in saying that, it makes the fight with Merab a lot more interesting, because Merab is viewed in the bantamweight division by a lot of people as this unstoppable force, a guy who maybe isn't as efficient with the takedowns, but he doesn't stop. So he's fine if he doesn't get a takedown on you, because he's not going to stop pushing for it. Whereas maybe like an American wrestler would try a couple times and then, sort of have to resort to standing up. Merab doesn't care. He weaponizes his cardio like nobody else at this stage in the UFC. So even if he's not getting you to the ground, even if he's not connecting on all of his punches, he is drowning you in there. And Cejudo was talking in the media just the other day saying, if I don't win this fight, I'll probably retire. If I win, I'll call out the winner of O'Malley Cheeto. I do not like to hear that type of mentality going into a fight. If you got one foot out the door in a sport like this, you better have something else in the back pocket for you, man, especially against a guy who's as dangerous as Merab the Machine Dvalishvili. I had no choice but to go with Merab on this one, and he came in at minus 220, which, again, is not great value on that, but I could not pick Henry Cejudo. As much as I tried to convince myself that it was a good idea, I just couldn't do it.
100%. Look, I agree with pretty much everything that you said. Like, I think I went on the preview show with Harry this week on the Severe setup. I went almost from thinking and convincing myself that Henry Cejudo was going to win, to actually at the end of our conversation convincing he was going to lose and retire. It was one of the turnarounds for the books on any of my predictions. The minus 225 is a smart bet. Like I said, you put your money down, you'll get your money back. If on this one, I would be confident of this bet, not as confident as the Ian Gary straight up. And I mean, if we're looking at Dashvili and what he does, I mean, by decision is a minus 125. Not a bad bet too if you want to kind of cut down those odds a little bit on the straight up money line. But I think, it's a very, very hard, and this is coming from a guy who's after predicting probably 2 out of his 3 bets so far by method of win. Sometimes it's just smarter to put up the straight up money line. But like I said, I'm fortune favors the bold, as they say, and that's kind of what my bets are this week for 298. Moving on, we'll skip the opening card, or the opening fight on the main card for now. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez versus Roman Kopylov. We move down to Amanda Lemos versus Mackenzie Dern. Speaking of straight up money lines, we're talking about Lemos here coming in at minus 138 on the straight up money line, and I just feel that she's a horrible matchup for Mackenzie Dern. This fight is going to be based off, for me, whether Mackenzie Dern can get the fight down, if she can keep the fight down. Because if this fight plays out mainly on the feet, she's going to be in big, big trouble. I think Lemos lands the heavier strikes. She's a crisper striker and a more devastating striker. And I think, we've seen not an improvement in Mackenzie Dern's striking, but we've actually seen a recline in her striking in some kind of strange manner. So it'll be very interesting to see what she brings in here. I've depended on Mackenzie Dern in the past. I'm not depending on her this time. I think this is a tough stylistic match. What do you think of the matchup and the bet down itself, Leo?
I would have gone the same way. It's
Yep.
not on my card, but I do agree with you on that one. The thing with Amanda Lemos is that I feel like people are just sort of sleeping on her based on the last fight against, Zhang Weili. Who hasn't Zhang Weili made look like that other than the absolute world-class people in that division? And on top of that, we saw Mackenzie Dern's last fight. She was a bit too keen to stay striking. She didn't really want to, rely on her actual strengths of being in the grappling department. And I feel like this is a sort of trend that we're starting to see a lot more in the UFC. These wrestlers who fall in love with their hands and they just, sort of become these fighters that want to stay standing. I don't know if it's an ego thing. I don't know if it's a mentality thing. I don't know what the reason is technically, but it just sort of feels like that's kind of where Mackenzie Dern is at in her career. And if she wants to do that with Amanda Lemos, it's going to be a long night. So I would go the same way as you, although it is not on my card.
Absolutely, yeah. That's some wise words there, Theo. As we move down along the card, we have, in my opinion, a phenom fighting on the undercard, and that's Rinya Nakamura, who is going in there to take on Carlos Vera of Ecuador, I believe he is from. But I've been watching Nakamura his last couple of fights, coming in here undefeated, coming in here with a lot of hype behind his name. And I just feel that, look, at his straight up odds are minus 1,200 there. So he's a 12-1 favorite coming in here. Obviously, we're not going to put any money down on that. So I was looking at value in some of the methods of victory here, and I've just having to straight up win in round two. Look, I think Carlos Ferreira is a tough cookie. He fought on the last Ultimate Fighter season with Conor McGregor and Mike Chandler, lost to Brad Katona on that season. That's nothing to be embarrassed about, really. But I think Nakamura is special. He's coming in here with elite level wrestling. He's coming in here with pretty solid striking as well. I can see him kind of taking the fight down, dominating on the ground, whether it be ground and pound, whether it be submission. I've picked him just to get the straight up win in round two at plus 325. Another plus bet for me, like I said, reaching for the stars this month. But let's see what happens. What do you think of that assessment? What do you think of that price? Do you think I should have went anywhere else? What are you thinking about Nakamura and his level of talent?
No, I think that's the move to do when you're, talking about a guy who's a minus 1,200 favorite on the money line. I mean, Nakamura is an absolute monster. I mean, as an Olympic wrestler, extremely talented in the grappling, but this guy has 5 first-round finishes throughout his career. Another one in the second round, which is what you're picking on this one. Listen, I don't know if there's anything scarier than a wrestler who has power in both hands, who knows how to use them. Nakamura is a guy who I think is going to make a lot of noise in the UFC. It starts with Carlos Vera, unfortunately for him. And I think it's a sharp bet to go round 2 on this one because we do see a bit of UFC jitters out of these guys. I know Nakamura's been in here before, but I don't believe he's fought in front of a crowd before. I believe it's all been, Road to UFC, Fight Nights at the Apex.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a big stage for him on a pay-per-view. California is a big deal for him to come all the way over to that area of the woods. It's going to be a bit of jitters, I think, for him, especially against a guy like Carlos Vera, who has some name value, a guy who he probably watched a couple of times, in the past couple of years before he made it to the UFC. I would imagine he doesn't come out as flaming hot as we're used to seeing him, but to get the finish is probably what's going to happen. And I like your pick of him having that happen in the second round.
Yeah, it's like, first round plus 145, on points plus 220. Round 3 is plus 750 if you're feeling a little bit brave coming for a late finish. A couple of different factors that I take in there is that, some fighters simply, know they're better, know they're going to win, but they want that cage time as well and going in there and taking somebody out. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen with Carlos Ferreira. He's a tough guy. He may last it all 3 rounds. I really can't see him winning here. Neither can the bookmakers either, given the prices on him. He is a big underdog, plus 700 coming in here straight up. So I mean, if you're maybe want to put a small bet on an upset, that's the biggest probable price on the card to do that. But we shall move on, Theo. I'm going to hand it over to you. Obviously, we won't go in chronological order here. We're going to the first fight on the card here between Angela Lee and Miranda Maverick. And you had something that tickles your fancy in this one. Explain your reasoning behind your bet and how these both of these women match up.
This one's pretty simple for me, honestly. It's not really about the matchup, which is not, something that sounds great coming out the gate when you're talking about putting down money on fights. But I think anytime you're going to get someone as a favorite at -190 over an opponent who's on a 3-fight losing streak, you have to take that bet almost. It's almost too tempting to not take it. And listen, Miranda Maverick also is incredible. She's got so much talent that I would have bet her anyways in this fight if it wasn't even that good of a price. But Andrea Lee has just fallen 3 times in her last 3 fights. She's been around a while. She's 35 as well. Momentum wise, we've seen trajectory of people's careers over the years and how it goes. I think she's at the end of her career. I don't know what her motivations are at this point compared to Maverick, who's still fresh in the game compared to her, still has aspirations of reaching the title. You got to wonder what Andrea Lee's motivations are at this point. Again, 3-fight skid, -190 for Miranda Maverick. It was almost too good to be true. I almost feel like I got sucked into this by the bookmakers. I feel like this is a trap line almost, but
They always get you on the first one. They
I'm
always get
happy
you
to
on the
be
first
trapped on this one. I'm happy to be
Yeah.
trapped here.
Look, at the way I see it is your assessment is exactly correct. I do think that this is a step down in competition for Angela Lee and a step up in competition for Miranda Maverick. But timing is essential here. Obviously, Miranda Maverick coming back off of those losses over Vivian Araujo, Macy Barber, and Natalia Silva. Three good level opponents, and we're going to find out how good of a level opponent Miranda Maverick is when she comes in there. I think styles make fights. I think Miranda has the style to take Angela down and frustrate her. It's a smart bet, but if you're thinking it's one of these, let's see what happens. Is Angela Lee totally finished? Is Miranda Maverick ready to kind of step in and take on some ranked opponents there in the 125-pound division? It's an interesting one. It's a smart bet, straight up. No messing around from Theo. I think no messing around from Theo this week overall in all of his picks, and plenty of messing around in my picks. Let's go on to my last one, and I have gone. Would you believe it? For another method kind of a bet in this fight. Oban Elliott makes his UFC debut against Val Woodburn. Val Woodburn obviously came in last time against Bo Nickel, got taken down, got hurt first, got taken down second, and got taken down with the punch and lost the fight via TKO. He is moving down in weight to 170 now, a weight that probably better suits him. Oban coming in. I think Oban has the better overall skill set, has the ability to get the job done here. With it being his UFC debut, with it being on a big card, all of the other factors coming in, Chael Sonnen is going to be there. I think Oban is going to be happy to get the win. I'm not sure that he's going to want to be or need to take too many risks to get that win. So for that reason, I picked him to win via decision at plus 250. And yeah, for the exact reason I just gave. I think he gets in there. He wants to win his UFC debut. Let's not take any chances against a somewhat underrated Val Woodburn at the same time. I think we can't take what happened against Bo Nickel and a weight class up for granted too much. Looking in here, he's got plenty of finishes before he joined up at the UFC. A couple of unanimous decision wins as well. But the Welsh gangster, I think he's going to go in there. He's going to win a decision. And that's at plus 250. Similar enough to the one that we pulled off with Jessica Penny or Raquel Pennington in the last event. I don't know. You're always good for at least one if you can pick it on the card. There's always going to be one fighter you're confident of to win by decision at a good price. This time for me, it's Oban Elliott. What do you think?
I love it, and mainly because I feel like Val Woodburn is a guy who's had his reputation a bit tarnished by the Bo Nickel fight. I rated him before that fight. I thought he was going to put up a much bigger fight. Obviously, we saw the way that it turned out. But like you said, 170, much better weight for him, I think. And again, like we were talking about earlier, UFC jitters are a real thing. I don't know if Oban Elliott's going to come out firing on all cylinders here. I think he's going to be more patient. He's going to want to take his time. He understands the dangers that are in front of him with Val Woodburn. I think the most likely outcome for this fight is Oban by decision. So the fact that you get it at plus 230, or excuse me, plus 250, it says here, that's a great value bet. And I honestly wouldn't even call it a flyer. I think that's a great straight bet, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm going to put some money down on that. I have an air of confidence. That's probably my most confident bet of the night. Maybe like even Amanda Lemos, you just don't know if Mackenzie Dern does go ball headed for her in round one. But I like that bet. I'm glad that it is at such a good price, and yeah, it's to me a likely outcome in that fight as well. What we're going to do now to round off is we're going to get up the graphics, and we are going to just share. Theo, if you want to bring up your one first, you talk us through, just remind everybody what your bets are first. We'll do my one second. We'll bring in the parlay last. Talk us through your bets.
So we're going with Topuria, of course, all-round great fighter. I think he has the tools to beat Volkanovski. Plus, he's at plus money. At least right now he is. You may want to get on that early before the line changes. Great value bet right there. Whitaker Costa over 2.5 rounds. Key that it's not by decision. A late finish is very much at play here, especially if Costa is gassing at the end of the third round. Whitaker's turning it on him. He's not used to really having 3-round fights. So the fact that he gets to really push the pace more than he would in a 5-rounder, I love that for Robert Whitaker. Ian Gary moneyline minus 230. Not a great value bet, but we're not so keen that he'll be able to get a finish on Jeff Neal. So just play it safe. Put him with the moneyline win. Of course, Merab Dvalishvili going to weaponize that cardio on Henry Cejudo. And just like Ian Gary, not sure if he'll get the finish, so you kind of got to play it safe there. I had a rough month last month, Ian, so I'm trying to do the right thing here. I'm trying to be responsible like we preach. Miranda Maverick also here. I may be trapped. I don't care. She's minus 190 and I'm going for it.
Boom. Very well said. Love it. Bring up my ones. I'll just talk us through my ones real quick before we share the team parlay. Like I said, Volk Topuria, I feel a tough fight, a great fight, one that we'll be talking about for quite some time. I would be more confident in Topuria getting the finish, but I am confident of Volkanovski producing a level of performance to bring him into the later stages of this fight, to push a pace and the fight to go the distance. Who it will go to, who knows? Who knows? I'm not taking that chance. I'm just going to go plus 130 for the decision, for the either fighter to win the decision, the fight going the distance. Ian Machado Gary by submission plus 600. Is he going to go back to his Brazilian roots for this camp? Take the fight down, get a submission. I don't know. I like it. I like it. Amanda Lemos, money line minus 138 coming in here. All she needs to do is sprawl and brawl, baby. Get the fight, keep it on the feet, get the big shots off, get the win at minus 138. Rini Nakamura, the Japanese phenom, coming in here against Carlos Vera, win in round 2. I mean, such a big money favorite. You've got to go here for a prediction of a round and a method if you want to earn more money. I just went for the round in round 2. I think, gets a little bit of cage time, gets the finish, gets out there unscathed. We'll see what happens with that. That's plus 325. And last but not least, I think the pick of the lot, Boban Elliott via decision at plus 250 for me is the value there. You can pick up some good money early days, bet with the house money for the rest of the card with the Canadian gangster if he takes it home by decision. And let's go with the team parlay, Theo. Let's take you through. Let's take everybody through your picks, your side of the bracket first, and then I'll discuss my one as well.
Well, again, Ian Gary, we're confident in him. Not much to say on that one. He's going to show the levels. Also, we didn't get to touch on this earlier. I feel like Ian Gary's IQ is the most underrated part of his game. He may not be going for the finish like we were talking about earlier, but he's smart enough to not put himself in dangerous positions, and he's happy just to get a win. So, Ian Gary moneyline minus 230 is fine for a parlay. And if I'm getting trapped, Ian, with Miranda Maverick, we're all getting trapped together. She is going to be the first fight of the night. If she loses, this whole thing is null and void. But the good news is we're going to roll in with a win with Miranda Maverick into your first pick, Boban Elliott.
Let's go. We're going to either be all in. It's either, as we say in Ireland, it's either shit or get off the pot. If Miranda Maverick doesn't get the job done, all of these are going to be deemed worthless. Are we going to be cursed? I don't even think it's the first fight curse we could be caught with again. I got caught with Jared Gordon last time. Hopefully you don't get caught. I really don't want you to get caught on this one. We have Boban Elliott again. I'm relying on the Canadian gangster here who's got to get the job done. This time around, I've just went with a straight bet at minus 300. Didn't really talk about Anthony Fluffy Hernandez and his fight with Roman Kopylov. I think Hernandez is a tricky striker, an excellent grappler, and I think he'll look to get Kopylov down. I feel it was another bet I was flirting with by submission, but I was like, I ain't going to pull off 2 submissions on the one card. Maybe I should have went with Fluffy and left Ian straight up. But look, at we can wallow in our missed opportunities, or we can what's the opposite of wallow? We can I'm stuck for words here. I shouldn't have bothered. We can rejoice
I
in
wish
our
I could save you,
victories.
and I'm sorry, bud.
Yeah, so it's all good to you. I had to come in and save myself, tag myself in there. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez minus 225 straight off to beat Roman Kopylov. Confident enough about that with a total. Look at short priced. Let's be real. Short price parlay at plus 322 here. All straight up money lines. But you could have a hell of a lot worse, couldn't you, Theo?
You could, and we did go safe, but with the UFC especially, I'm telling everyone that I know who asked me my opinions on this, the UFC is by far, in my opinion, the hardest sport to bet on. There's just so many ways to win a fight. One straight punch could all of a sudden hit some guy's eye, and then he can't see out of half of his eye. So all of a sudden the fight changes on just one thing that's not even his fault. Like, things like that happen all the time. One kick gets checked the wrong way. All of a sudden you're not moving the right way, and a minus 500 favorite becomes even money. So we had to play it safe here. We did not have a great time last time. Plus 322 is not great value for a 4-leg parlay in other sports, but the UFC, it's tough to get a better price than that. I think we did an all right job.
We did too, and we'll continue to try doing a good job on here on the Severe MMA Betting Show. Gamble responsibly. We'll be back for UFC 299. We'll see you then. Take care, folks. Bye then.